This is a video response to iamthatroby's video essay of X-Men Dark Phoenix, a movie I have mixed feelings on, but I feel that it's getting a lot of undeserved criticisms here. And yeah, I know the video is 2 months old, but better late than never. But that's not to say I don't agree with a few of these points though, such as these.
I personally believe Simon Kinberg had no right to make this film. Scott and Jean should be the main players in this film. Jean should be the main character with Scott as like a secondary character. That's how this story should work.
I do believe that they should have gotten a seasoned director for this movie, and that Scott should have been a lead character alongside Jean and Xavier. And that actually was the case before all the reshoots. Now, let's get started.
I don't understand why Jessica Chastain is in this film. I don't understand why Simon Kinberg decided that the X-Men franchise needed aliens in it. Like, it's incredibly unnecessary to put either Jessica Chastain or those people in this film.
Jessica Chastain is in this movie because she had originally signed up to play Larandra of the Shi'ar Empire. This was back when the movie was planned as a two-parter, not unlike Infinity War and Endgame, which Olivia Munn had alluded to back in 2017. But the studio had decided in late pre-production to make it into one movie. Very recently, Chris Claremont had confirmed this, saying that the first movie was to make us fall in love with Jean, and the second one was to break our hearts. Then the aliens were rewritten into Skrulls, but then Captain Marvel happened, and the aliens were changed into the Dabari, which Jessica Chastain alluded to in an interview.
Always like every day kind of trying to figure out, who am I? You know, the mystery of who is this character? And then understanding that also with the reshoots, you kind of go, oh, it's changing again. You know what I mean? It was like a constant evolution.
Had I not read interviews with Simon Kinberg, I never would have known this movie was set in the 1990s. You know, it's like, don't expect me to care if you don't even care. Play some 90s music. Make fucking Bill Clinton the president. Have some sort of indication that this is the 90s.
They do have a title card in the beginning that says it takes place in 1992, and they do use the setting a little bit. You see, the Space Shuttle mission was a real-life mission that took place in 1992, which is the Space Shuttle Endora on its first mission. They even had footage from the 90s of its first launch. Sure, they could have made George Bush the president and all that stuff. I agree with you on that. But there is a bit of use of the 90s in that movie.
Let's talk about something that YouTube obviously loves talking about. Let's talk about feminism and how Simon Kinberg's interpretation of feminism is women fighting each other for power. In a very basic view of the film's interpretation of Dark Phoenix, it's basically about some alien woman played by Jessica Chastain who wants to take this really amazing power away from a younger woman played by Sophie Turner. If you want to look broadly, it's really a movie about a woman hating another woman because she has more power than her, which is a really horrible interpretation of feminism and completely against what the fourth wave feminism, which is what the current iteration of it is all about.
She didn't want the power for the sake of it. She wanted to use that power to rebuild her homeworld on Earth, similar to Zod in Man of Steel.
It's very strange that the Dark Phoenix adaptation a year after, or 2 years I guess, after Me Too, doesn't have a manipulative male as the antagonist, because I feel like that would make sense.
That's because the movement did not exist when this movie was shot.
I started writing this movie 3 years ago, so I wasn't thinking about, the Me Too movement didn't exist.
Right.
The movie is just a really stupid take on feminism, or a take on the Dark Phoenix story, which is a really pro-women story about how the only people who should decide a woman's fate is the woman. You know, Jean decides to kill herself in that storyline to save everyone, to destroy the Phoenix Force. And in this film, she does the same thing, but at the same time, she doesn't really empower anyone. It's just like, oh, I gotta kill the baddie now. Oh no, I'm gonna die as well.
She didn't really die at the end of the movie. There's a voiceover by Jean where she tells the audience that she evolved beyond this world and that it's not the end of her. I'll let Emergency Awesome's video explain.
But seemingly they think that Jean Grey is dead, when really she just evolved into the full cosmic Phoenix Force. So technically she's not dead, but she flies off into outer space, but they only see the Phoenix Force flying off into outer space. They don't see Jean's body or anything like that. and they try to do an homage to 2001 Space Odyssey with a sequence of her becoming full cosmic Phoenix Force, where you're sort of passing through the wormhole, evolving as a human. So it's Jean Grey evolving to final boss form Phoenix. And ever since the beginning of the movie, Professor X has not been able to read Jean Grey's mind because she's become so powerful, so he can't read her cosmic force mind to know that she's still alive. But also while that's happening, the camera sort of pans out and you see the sky, you see this giant phoenix shape forming in orbit. So it's just a way to reference that the Phoenix Force is still out there, Jean Grey is still alive, in cosmic form albeit. So who knows, you could write as much fanfiction as you want about what happens after this.
Simon Kinberg also confirmed that Jean was alive. So in the end, Jean is the one that is empowered. I mean, she becomes a god. It doesn't get more empowering than that.
Dark Phoenix raises a point that was already raised in The Last Stand, and raised even earlier than that in the original Dark Phoenix comic book. But it raises this idea that Charles Xavier is kind of a bad dude. And he certainly is to a degree. But I think the way the movie portrays him as a villain is really kind of stupid. Because it doesn't really make him out as like a complex person more than just a guy who's very obviously in the wrong. Like, instead of exploring the fact that this guy does give them a home and he does make them fight threats that could ultimately kill them, the movie is more interested in just how Charles is kind of cocky. And I think that's a really dumb thing to focus on, especially when there's a lot more going on behind the scenes or underneath. It focuses on a very obvious fact that, you know, Charles didn't tell Jean that her father didn't want her after she killed her mum, after she accidentally murdered her mum. It just sort of makes Charles out to be a fucking idiot more than just a bad dude.
I don't think the movie is trying to make him out to be a bad guy, but rather a flawed hero, like he is in the comics. Because Jean does forgive Charles in the end when she finds out they did have love.
They don't focus on the fact that Charles manipulated Jean to keep the power repressed, which I think is a much more unique and interesting story to tell. They focus on the fact that he didn't tell her that her dad was a fuckwit.
That's because Xavier read Wolverine's mind back in Days of Future Past, and he learned of the events of what happened in the original timeline. And in X3, he did suppress Jean's powers, and that resulted in, you know, Jean going crazy.
When she was a girl, I created a series of psychic barriers to isolate her powers from her conscious mind. And as a result, Jean developed a dual personality.
What?
The conscious Jean, whose powers were always in her control, and the dormant side. A personality that in our sessions came to call itself the Phoenix.
So doing that again would have been a bad idea, to say the least.
I think it speaks for the problems of this movie in general. This movie is just very surface level. There is absolutely nothing going on behind the scenes. You know, if you want to look deep in this film, you will find nothing. It's not like a Zack Snyder BVS, or it's not like, you know, The Dark Knight or anything, where there are obvious symbols and obvious metaphors and obvious deeper meanings. This movie is just extremely face value, and that fucking sucks.
Oh, there are metaphors and themes in this movie, particularly the subtext of mental health issues, according to the cast and crew. They did a lot of research to have Jean's experience mirror that of a mental health problem, particularly the symptoms of schizophrenia. And the parallels are there. Jean's celebrity gets out of control and she starts hearing voices in her head. She becomes paranoid of Xavier, isolates herself from everybody, and she becomes impulsively aggressive.
This movie I had to study quite a bit of mental illness and schizophrenia and dissociative identity disorder. So in that sense, I love that I have learned a lot coming from this movie and learned more about that mental illness world.
What kind of conversations do you hope that would start once people leave theatre?
I just want a conversation to start about mental illness, because I think it needs to be at the forefront of society. Like, I think people need to talk about it as much as possible, and then people will feel more comfortable with it, less ashamed, and feel more accepted by society.
I think the thing I hope people will come away from this film, beyond just the ride of it, is that there's always a chance to help them and to bring them back.
And some people have noticed the metaphors. Some even found it relatable to them. And that's what the X-Men are supposed to be. They're supposed to be relatable, represent disenfranchised people. So I don't think the movie betrayed the X-Men, and there are a lot more themes that are carried over from Days of Future Past, which I will get into in another video. But that's all I gotta say for now. Till next time.